To a wounded Apache woman, Cowboy gave his only horse. What she offered him was beyond imagination. The arrow missed Cole Harrison's head by 3 inches and buried itself in the cottonwood behind him. He dropped flat against the desert sand, his revolver already in his hand, eyes scanning the ridge where gunsmoke drifted in the afternoon heat. The stagecoach he'd been riding lay on its side 50 yards back, wheels still spinning, driver dead in the traces. 4 other passengers scattered like quail into the rocks, but Cole stayed low, watching. Another shot cracked the air. This one came from the east. Different angle, different gun. They had him boxed. Cole's horse, a bay gelding named Copper, stomped nervously near the overturned coach, reins dragging. The animal wouldn't last long in his crossfire. Then he saw her. She was crawling through the brush 20 feet from his position, one leg dragging behind her, leaving a dark trail in the pale dirt. Apache, from the beadwork on her torn deerskin dress. Young, maybe 20. Blood soaked her left thigh where a bullet had torn through. Her black hair hung in matted tangles across her face, but her eyes burned with a fierce determination that Cole recognized. She wasn't running from the fight. She was trying to get back into it. A rifle barked from the ridge and kicked up sand near her head. She flattened, gasping, then continued crawling toward a fallen rifle that lay near a dead man in cavalry blue. Cole understood immediately. This wasn't a robbery. This was a running battle, and the woman was on the losing side. 3 riders burst from cover to the north, spurring hard toward the stagecoach wreckage. They weren't after the strongbox. They were after her. Cole saw the fury in their faces, the way they ignored everything else. Bounty hunters, or worse. The woman saw them too and abandoned her crawl toward the rifle, instead rolling behind a boulder barely large enough to hide her. Cole had maybe 5 seconds to decide. He'd spent 8 years as a rancher minding his own business, and before that, 10 years as a cavalry scout trying to forget the things he'd seen. Getting involved in Apache troubles was a guaranteed way to end up dead or worse. The smart play was to stay flat, let events unfold, ride away on Copper when the dust settled. He was on his feet before he finished the thought. Cole ran low and fast, firing twice at the riders to scatter them, then slid behind the boulder beside the wounded woman. She stared at him with eyes black as obsidian, her hand wrapped around a knife she'd pulled from somewhere. Blood covered her leg, her arm, the side of her face. She said something in Apache, harsh and urgent, then switched to broken English. "Go away. You die here." "Already made that choice," Cole said. He fired again at the riders, now taking cover behind the coach. "Can you ride? My horse dead. Mine isn't." Cole whistled sharp and high. Copper's ears pricked up and the bay trotted toward them through the chaos, trained to come when called. The woman's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her fierce composure. Cole grabbed her arm and hauled her up, ignoring her gasp of pain. She was lighter than he expected, all wire and bone. "You're insane," she hissed, but she didn't fight him. Been told that before. Cole lifted her toward Copper's saddle. The horse danced sideways as bullets kicked up dust around them, but held steady. "You know somewhere safe?" The woman pulled herself into the saddle with strength that surprised him, her face gray with pain but her jaw set. She looked down at him, and something shifted in her expression. Not gratitude exactly. Something harder. Something that looked like a debt being calculated. "Canyon," she said, 2 miles east. "My people there. Then ride." Cole slapped Copper's hindquarters, and the bay took off at a gallop, the woman clinging to the saddle horn with both hands. The 3 riders shouted and wheeled their mounts to follow, but Cole put 2 more shots near their horses' feet, spoiling their pursuit. By the time they regrouped, Copper was a dust cloud disappearing into the broken hills. Cole stood alone in the desert with an empty revolver and no horse, watching the woman vanish toward whatever waited in that canyon. He had just given away his only means of escape to save someone he didn't know, for reasons he couldn't quite explain. The riders turned their attention toward him, and Cole smiled grimly. This was going to hurt. They came at him hard and fast, 3 men with blood in their eyes and revenge on their minds. Cole had 6 bullets left in his gun belt, and no illusions about his chances. He ran for the overturned stagecoach, reloading as his boots pounded the hard ground, and dove behind the wooden frame as the first volley of shots splintered the wood above his head. "That was a stupid thing you just did, mister," one of them shouted. His voice carried the flat drawl of Texas, but harder, meaner. That Apache killed 2 men in Prescott. Had a bounty on her head big enough to set us up for a year. Cole didn't waste breath on a reply. He counted the seconds between their shots, mapped their positions by sound. 2 had dismounted and were working around to flank him. The 3rd stayed mounted, probably their leader, hanging back to direct the play. Standard tactics. Cole had seen it 100 times during the war. He waited until the footsteps came close, then rolled out from the opposite side of the coach and fired twice. The first man went down, clutching his shoulder. The second dove behind a rock, cursing. Cole scrambled back to cover before the mounted man could draw a bead on him. "You protecting her makes you an accomplice," the leader called out. "Territorial law says we can shoot you just as legal as her." "Territorial law got no jurisdiction over my conscience," Cole shouted back. He was checking his ammunition when he heard it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses, coming fast from the east. For a moment his heart lifted, thinking maybe the woman had sent help. Then he saw the dust cloud and knew better. Too many horses, too organized. This was something else. The 3 bounty hunters heard it too. Their shooting stopped. In the sudden silence, Cole risked a look around the coach's edge and saw them frozen, staring at the approaching riders. Even from a distance, Cole could make out the dark blue of cavalry uniforms. "Well," the leader said, loud enough for Cole to hear, "looks like we got ourselves some proper law arriving. Let's see how your story holds up against ours, cowboy." But the cavalry patrol wasn't slowing down. They thundered straight past the stagecoach wreckage, barely glancing at the scene, and kept riding hard toward the east, toward the canyon where Cole had sent the woman. The lieutenant leading them had his saber drawn and his face set with the kind of determination that meant orders from high up. 20 soldiers, riding like the devil himself, was chasing them. Cole's stomach dropped. He'd sent her right into a trap. The bounty hunters watched the cavalry disappear into the hills, then turned back to Cole with renewed purpose. But something had changed. They weren't shooting anymore. The leader dismounted and walked forward, hands visible but close to his guns. "Looks like maybe we're on the same side after all," he said. "That patrol's heading to clean out the canyon settlement. Been hearing rumors about it for weeks. Apache renegades hiding out, raiding supply lines. Army's finally doing something about it." "She wasn't raiding anything," Cole said. "She was running for her life. From us." "Yeah, because she killed 2 miners in cold blood, found them with their throats cut and their supplies gone. She's a murderer, plain and simple." Cole studied the man's face, looking for the lie, but saw only certainty. Maybe he believed what he was saying. Maybe it was even true. Cole had no way of knowing. But he'd seen the woman's eyes, seen the bullet wound in her leg, seen the way those men had been hunting her. Whatever the truth was, it wasn't simple. "The canyon," Cole said. "How many people in it?" The leader shrugged. "Don't know. Don't care. Army's problem now, not ours. We're heading back to Prescott to collect on the other 2 we already brought in. You want my advice, cowboy? You'll come with us. Nothing but death waiting out here." They left him there with his thoughts and the dead driver and the settling dust. Cole waited until they were gone, then started walking east. He had no horse, no water, and the sun was already leaning toward afternoon. 2 miles over broken desert terrain would take him an hour, maybe more. He'd arrive thirsty, exhausted, and too late to make any difference. He walked anyway. The desert was quiet except for the scrape of his boots and the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. Cole kept his eyes on the ground, watching for snakes and hoping his canteen would last. He thought about Copper, hoped the bay would be smart enough to find water, hoped the woman had made it to the canyon before the cavalry, hoped he wasn't walking toward a massacre. The land rose gradually, red rock pushing up through the sand, creating shadows and narrow passages. Cole heard the shooting before he saw anything else. Not the scattered crack of a skirmish, but sustained fire, volley after volley, echoing off canyon walls. He started running, his legs burning, lungs gasping in the dry air. He came over a rise and saw the canyon spread below. It wasn't large, maybe 100 yards across, with steep walls and a narrow entrance. Perfect defensive position. The cavalry had tried a frontal assault and paid for it. Cole counted at least 6 bodies in blue uniforms, scattered near the canyon mouth. The rest had pulled back and were setting up for a siege, their horses picketed behind a rock formation. Smoke rose from inside the canyon. Not much, just a thin trail that suggested cooking fires, not destruction. The Apache inside were still alive, still fighting. Cole scanned the canyon rim and saw figures moving among the rocks, defenders positioned to rain down fire on anyone trying to force the entrance. Then he saw Copper. The bay was tied with other horses in a makeshift corral against the far canyon wall, visible through the entrance. The woman had made it inside. She delivered his horse to safety and now was probably up on those rocks, wounded leg and all, fighting for her life. Cole circled wide, staying low, working his way around to where the cavalry had made camp. He needed information before he did anything stupid. though walking into a combat zone without a horse probably already qualified as stupid. He found a vantage point behind a cluster of boulders that gave him a clear view of the cavalry position. The lieutenant was young, maybe 25, with the kind of clean uniform that said he'd never seen real combat before today. He was arguing with his sergeant, an older man with scars and hard eyes. "We can't just wait them out," the lieutenant was saying. "Orders were to eliminate the threat today. General Crook himself signed off on this operation." "With respect, sir, those orders didn't account for them having the high ground and enough ammunition to hold off an army. We go charging in again, we'll lose half our men before we get 10 feet inside that canyon. Then we smoke them out." Set fires at the entrance forced them to choose between burning and surrendering. The sergeant's face went carefully blank. "Sir, there's women and children in there. Reports said this was a renegade war party, but I've seen at least 3 women on those walls. This might be a family group, not raiders. Our intelligence says otherwise. These are the Apache who've been hitting supply wagons for the past month. We have our orders." Cole watched the sergeant's jaw work, saw the man weigh duty against conscience and come up with no good answer. He'd been that sergeant once, standing in different territory under different orders, making calculations that still woke him up at night. He needed a new plan. Charging in wouldn't work, talking wouldn't work. The lieutenant was young and scared and committed to following orders, which made him more dangerous than a veteran who might be willing to negotiate. The Apache in the canyon were cornered and would fight to the last bullet. This could only end one way, unless something changed. Cole started working his way back along the rim, looking for a path down into the canyon that the cavalry hadn't covered. The rock was treacherous, all loose shale and sharp edges, but he found a crack wide enough to squeeze through. It would put him inside the defensive perimeter, which meant the Apache would probably shoot him on sight, but it was the only option he had. He was halfway down the crack, wedged between 2 rock faces and questioning every decision that had led him to this moment, when he heard the voice. "Stop moving or die." Cole froze. The voice came from above, speaking English with an Apache accent. Not the woman he'd saved. Someone else. He risked tilting his head back and saw a teenage boy looking down at him, rifle aimed steady at Cole's chest. "The woman?" Cole called up. "The one I gave my horse to. I need to talk to her." "You cavalry?" "Do I look like cavalry?" Cole gestured at his dusty civilian clothes, his empty holster. "I'm just a man trying to not get killed for doing the right thing, though I'm starting to wonder if there is a right thing anymore." The boy studied him for a long moment, then said something in Apache. Another voice responded from deeper in the rocks. A conversation happened that Cole couldn't follow, all rapid exchanges and what sounded like argument. Then the boy looked back down. "She says come, but if you lie, if you trick, you die slow." "Fair enough," Cole said, and continued climbing down into the canyon, wondering what he'd gotten himself into and whether that woman's offer, whatever it was, would be worth the cost of getting here. They pulled him over the canyon rim with rough hands, 3 Apache warriors with rifles and expressions that promised pain if he moved wrong. Cole kept his hands visible, his movements slow, letting them pat him down and take his revolver and knife without protest. The teenage boy who'd spotted him led the way down a narrow trail that zigzagged between enormous boulders, each turn revealing another layer of the canyon's defenses. The settlement wasn't what Cole expected. Instead of a war camp, he saw families. Men grinding corn outside brush shelters, children huddled together near a small fire, old men sitting in the shade checking weapons. Maybe 30 people total, and only 10 or 12 looked capable of fighting. This wasn't a raider stronghold, this was a refuge. The woman sat on a flat rock near the center of camp, her wounded leg stretched out and wrapped in fresh bandages. Someone had cleaned the blood from her face and braided her hair. She looked stronger than before, though pain still tightened the corners of her mouth. When she saw Cole, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, yes, but something else, something calculating. "You are more foolish than I thought," she said in English. Her voice was stronger than it had been in the desert, but carried an edge like broken glass. Or braver. "I have not decided which." "Neither," Cole said. "Just stubborn. There's cavalry outside planning to burn you out. Thought you should know." "We know. We have been watching them since they arrived. They tried to rush the entrance once. We killed 6. They will not try again soon. They don't have to rush. They can wait." "You have enough water? Enough ammunition?" Cole saw the answer in her face before she spoke. "That's what I thought." One of the warriors said something sharp in Apache. The woman responded without looking at him, her eyes staying locked on Cole. The warrior didn't like her answer, spoke again, louder. She cut him off with a single word that hit like a slap, and the man went silent, though his hand stayed near his rifle. "He wants to kill you," the woman said to Cole conversationally. Says you might be a spy, might be leading more cavalry here. I told him you are mine, that I claim you by the old laws. What old laws? You saved my life. You gave me your only horse when you could have left me to die. Under the old ways, that creates a debt that must be repaid. A life for a life, a gift for a gift. Till the debt is settled, you are under my protection. He cannot touch you. Cole glanced at the warrior's face and saw fury barely contained. He doesn't look convinced. He does not have to be convinced. He only has to obey. I am daughter of the chief. These are my father's people. She paused, and pain crossed her features that had nothing to do with her wounded leg. My father is dead. Killed 3 days ago by the same men who were chasing me. The bounty hunters told you I murdered 2 miners in Prescott. That is a lie. Those miners attacked our hunting camp, killed my father and 2 other men while they slept. I killed the miners in return. The white man's law calls that murder. We call it justice. Cole absorbed this, recalibrating everything he thought he knew. The cavalry doesn't know that story. The cavalry does not care. They have orders to clear this canyon. They think we are raiders. We are not. We are families who refused to go to the reservation, who wanted to live as our people have always lived. But the white men say there is no room for that anymore. They say we must go to San Carlos or die. The San Carlos is a death trap, Cole said quietly. He'd seen the reservation, seen the corruption, the starvation, the diseases spreading through people who'd once been free. I don't blame you for refusing. Your sympathy changes nothing. The cavalry will attack again before nightfall. They will set fires, or they will charge, or they will find some other way to kill us. We can hold them for a while, but we are few, and they are many. Eventually we will run out of bullets, or they will get lucky. Then we die. She said it flatly, stating a fact like the color of the sky. Unless you help us. Help you how? I'm one man with no horse and no weapons. The woman smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You are a white man who speaks English and wears white man's clothes. You can walk into their camp and they will not shoot you. You can tell them things. Lies? You mean truth or lies? What difference? Words that might save lives or words that might buy time? I do not care which you choose. But you asked what I could offer you beyond imagination. She gestured at the canyon around them, at the people watching with hollow eyes. I offer you the chance to be more than a man who walks away, more than someone who minds his own business while others die. You gave me your horse. I give you purpose. Cole stared at her, at this fierce young woman who had just lost her father and probably knew she was leading her people toward death, but refused to show weakness. That's a terrible gift. Yes, she agreed. But it is the only one I have. Will you take it? Before Cole could answer, a shout went up from the canyon rim. One of the watchers was pointing at the cavalry position, calling out warnings in Apache. The woman pushed herself upright, grimacing at the pain, and hobbled toward a gap in the rocks that gave a view of the entrance. Cole followed. The cavalry had formed up into 2 groups. One was preparing to advance on horseback, sabers drawn, the classic cavalry charge that had broken so many defensive lines. The other group was setting bundles of dry brush near the canyon entrance, preparing to light them. The 2-pronged assault. Force the defenders to choose which threat to counter, then exploit the gap. They are learning, the woman said. That lieutenant is young but not completely stupid. We cannot stop both attacks. If we focus on the cavalry charge, they will smoke us out. If we focus on stopping the fires, the cavalry will break through. She looked at Cole. Now you decide. Walk away or help. But decide quickly. Cole watched the cavalry making their preparations and felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. He'd walked away from this life, sworn he was done making decisions that got people killed. He'd built a ranch, raised cattle, tried to forget the sound of bullets and screaming and all the things he couldn't undo. But here he was anyway, standing in a canyon with people who were about to die, holding the knowledge that might save them or might get them killed faster. The woman was right. Purpose was a terrible gift. It was also the only one that mattered. I need my gun back, Cole said. And I need to borrow a horse. You would ride into their camp armed? They will shoot you. Not if I'm smart about it. Not if I have the right story. Cole's mind was already working through angles, possibilities, the kind of tactical thinking he'd hoped never to use again. That lieutenant wants to be a hero, wants to complete his mission without losing too many men. I can give him a way to do that, or at least make him think I can. The woman studied him for a long moment, then spoke rapidly in Apache. The teenage boy who'd first spotted Cole ran off and returned with Cole's revolver and a saddled horse, a paint mare with intelligent eyes. The woman handed Cole his gun herself. "If you betray us," she said softly, "I will spend whatever life I have left hunting you. I will find you no matter where you hide, and I will make your death last days. Do you understand?" "I'd expect nothing less." "Good. Then go do whatever foolish thing you are planning. If you survive, come back and we will settle our debt." Cole swung into the saddle, felt the paint shift beneath him, testing this new rider. "I never got your name." "Luna," she said. "Daughter of the wind, daughter of fire, daughter of a dead chief who thought his people could stay free. Remember it when you lie to the cavalry." "I'll remember," Cole promised, and turned the paint toward the narrow crack in the canyon wall that would lead him back out to the desert, back to the cavalry, back to the kind of choices that had no right answers, only different kinds of wrong. He rode out of the canyon as the sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the rocks red and gold, beautiful and indifferent to the violence about to unfold. The cavalry sentries spotted him immediately, rifles raised, but Cole kept his hands visible and his pace steady. He rode like a man with nothing to hide, which was the first and most important lie. The lieutenant met him 50 yards from the camp, saber still in hand, suspicion written across his young face. "State your business," he demanded. "This is a military operation. Civilians need to clear the area." "My business is saving your life, Lieutenant," Cole said calmly. "And the lives of your men. That canyon you're about to assault? I just came from inside. Let me tell you what you're really facing, and then you can decide if charging in there is worth the cost." The lieutenant's eyes narrowed, but he didn't order his men to shoot. That was a start. Cole dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate, and began talking. He had maybe 5 minutes to sell the biggest bluff of his life, and everything depended on how well he could read a young officer's fears and ambitions. The sun kept falling. In the canyon, Luna and her people prepared for battle, and Cole Harrison, who'd just wanted to mind his own business and raise cattle in peace, found himself exactly where he'd sworn never to be again, standing between two forces ready to kill each other, trying to find words that might stop the bloodshed. He wasn't sure if Luna's gift was purpose or curse. Maybe they were the same thing. Maybe that was the point. The lieutenant listened with the careful attention of a man who'd already lost 6 soldiers and didn't want to lose more. Cole chose his words precisely, mixing truth with misdirection, painting a picture designed to make the young officer think twice. "There's at least 40 warriors in that canyon," Cole said, inflating the numbers. "I counted weapons on every position along the rim, and they've got ammunition stockpiled. More than you'd expect. Someone's been supplying them, probably running guns up from Mexico. They're dug in deep, got water from a spring, and they're willing to die before surrendering." "How did you get inside?" The lieutenant's hand hadn't left his saber hilt. "Traded information, told them I'd seen cavalry movement to the west, tried to convince them they had an escape route in that direction. They didn't buy it completely, but they let me live long enough to realize I was wasting my time. Those Apache aren't running. I committed to this position." The sergeant who'd argued with the lieutenant earlier stepped forward. "You get a look at their defenses? Any weak points?" "Every approach is covered. They've got riflemen positioned to create crossfire at the entrance. You charge in there with cavalry, you'll lose half your men in the first 30 seconds. The ones who make it through will be fighting uphill in tight quarters against people who know every inch of that terrain." Cole watched the information settle on the lieutenant's face, saw him doing the math. "What about the fires? We smoke them out. They have to come down or suffocate." "Maybe. Or maybe they retreat deeper into the canyon where there's caves and overhangs. You'll be fighting in smoke and darkness against an enemy you can't see. Could take days. Could cost you every man you have." Cole paused, letting the weight of that sink in. "But that's your call, Lieutenant. I'm just a civilian who wandered into the wrong fight. I'll be heading out now. Getting clear before the shooting starts." "Wait." The lieutenant's voice carried a note that Cole recognized, desperation trying to hide behind authority. "You said they have a spring. That means they don't need to come out for water. We can't wait them out, can't burn them out, can't charge them without heavy casualties. What would you suggest?" And there it was, the opening Cole had been working toward. "I'm not a military man, Lieutenant, but if I were in your position, I'd consider what your actual orders are. Were you told to eliminate specific individuals, or just to clear the canyon?" The lieutenant's jaw tightened. "We're ordered to eliminate the Apache threat in this sector. Intelligence indicated this was a raider base. Intelligence was wrong. I saw families in there. Women, children, old men. Maybe a dozen fighters total, not 40 like they want you to think. They've positioned them to look like more. The supplies they've been raiding? That's how they're staying alive, because the reservation won't take them, and they can't hunt anymore with bounty hunters tracking them. They're desperate, not dangerous. There's a difference." The sergeant nodded slowly, but the lieutenant looked troubled. Our orders come from General Crook himself. If we return saying we found families instead of raiders, it makes the general look foolish, makes us look weak. Cole had known officers like this, more afraid of disappointing superiors than of getting men killed. It was a special kind of cowardice dressed up as duty. What if you didn't return saying you found families? What if you returned saying you negotiated a surrender? They won't surrender. You just said they were committed to the position. They won't surrender to be slaughtered or sent to San Carlos. But what if there was another option? What if you gave them safe passage to cross into Mexico? No pursuit, no arrests, just gone. They disappear, you report mission accomplished, territory cleared of threats. Everyone lives. The lieutenant stared at Cole like he'd suggested something obscene. Let him escape? That's not following orders, that's dereliction of duty. Following orders gets you a pile of dead soldiers and maybe some dead Apache to show for it. Maybe you survive the fight. Then you get to write letters to mothers and wives explaining why their men died taking a canyon full of starving families. Or you can let them walk away, file a report saying the Apache threat has been eliminated from the sector, and sleep at night knowing you made the smart choice instead of the easy one. The sergeant cleared his throat. Sir, if I may, the man has a point. We're low on ammunition after that first assault. We're a day's ride from any support. If this turns into a prolonged siege or a bloody fight, we might not have the resources to win it. A negotiated withdrawal of hostiles from the territory accomplishes the strategic objective. The lieutenant looked between them, and Cole saw the war happening behind his eyes. Ambition versus pragmatism, orders versus reality, the officer he wanted to be versus the officer circumstances required. Cole had seen young men break both ways under pressure. Some became martinets who led through bullying and fear. Others learned to bend without breaking, to find the space between the rules where actual leadership lived. If I agreed to this insanity, the lieutenant said slowly, how would we even communicate it? They're not going to believe we're offering safe passage. They'll think it's a trick. Let me carry the message, Cole said. They let me out alive once. They might listen again. Give me until dawn. If they don't accept by then, you can proceed with whatever assault you think best. The young officer studied Cole's face, searching for deception or hidden motive. Why do you care? You said yourself you wandered into this by accident. You could ride away right now and none of this would be your problem. Cole thought about Luna's fierce eyes, about Copper standing in that makeshift corral, about all the times in his life he'd looked away from hard choices and carried the weight of that cowardice ever since. Sometimes you don't get to choose your problems, Lieutenant. Sometimes they choose you. The lieutenant looked at his sergeant, at the camp, at the canyon mouth where smoke from their aborted fires still drifted. Finally, he nodded. You have until dawn, but I'm posting guards around the perimeter. If anyone tries to leave that canyon except to surrender, we open fire. And if you don't come back with an answer by sunrise, I'm following my original orders. Understood? Understood, Cole said, and swung back onto the paint mare before the young officer could change his mind. He rode back toward the canyon as the light failed, thinking through how to sell this offer to Luna and her people. Safe passage to Mexico meant leaving the land they'd fought to stay on, meant exile and uncertainty. But it also meant living to see another sunrise, which beat the alternative. The Apache sentries recognized him this time and didn't shoot, though they tracked him with their rifles all the way down the trail. Luna was waiting where he'd left her, her wounded leg propped on a blanket, a rifle across her knees. You came back, she said. I am surprised. Don't be. I'm too stubborn to die easy and too foolish to know when to quit. Cole dismounted and told her about his conversation with the lieutenant, about the offer of safe passage, about the dawn deadline. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Around them, the canyon settlement had gone still. Everyone was listening, waiting to hear what their leader would decide. The weight of their survival sat on her shoulders like stones. Mexico, she said finally. My grandfather was born there, before the white men drew their lines and said, this land is America, that land is Mexico. He used to say the land does not care what men call it. The mountains, the desert, they remember when Apache could walk from here to the Sierra Madre without crossing borders. She smiled sadly. But my grandfather is dead. We live in a world of borders now, borders enforced by men with guns. It's not the choice you want, Cole acknowledged, but it's the choice that lets you live, lets these children grow up, lets your people survive to see what comes next. Survival is not the same as living. Luna's hand tightened on her rifle. But death is final. At least in Mexico we have possibility. Here, We only have certainty. She looked up at the canyon rim where her warriors watched and waited. I will tell them. We will vote, as is our way, but I think I know what they will choose. We are tired of fighting. We are tired of running. If the white man offers us a way to stop, even at the cost of leaving, most will take it. And you? Cole asked. What will you choose? Luna met his eyes, and he saw the daughter of the wind and fire, saw the weight of leadership and loss, saw determination that even bullets and betrayal hadn't broken. I will lead my people to safety. That is what my father would want. That is what being chief means, making the choice that saves lives even when your heart screams for revenge. She pushed herself upright, wincing at the pain in her leg, and began speaking in Apache to the gathered people. Cole didn't understand the words, but he heard the tone. Resignation mixed with relief, grief mixed with hope. The people responded in voices that carried the exhaustion of too many battles, too many losses. When the talking finished, Luna turned back to Cole. They agree. We will leave at first light, go south to Mexico. The cavalry will keep their distance and not pursue. You promise this? I promise to make the lieutenant keep his word. If he breaks it, I'll do what I can to warn you. And what happens to you when we are gone? You will return to your ranch, to your cattle, to your quiet life? Cole thought about Copper, about the bay waiting in the canyon, about riding back to a ranch that suddenly felt smaller and lonelier than before. I don't know, maybe quiet isn't what I'm looking for anymore. Luna reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out something small, pressed it into Cole's palm. He looked down and saw a turquoise stone carved with symbols he didn't recognize, strung on a leather cord. My father gave this to me when I was 12, she said. Said it would protect me, bring me luck. It did not save him, and it did not stop the bullets. But it brought me you, and you brought me choices when I thought I had none left. That is worth something. She closed his fingers around the stone. Keep it. Remember that one man's choice can change everything. Remember that walking toward trouble instead of away from it is not always stupid. Sometimes it is the only thing that matters. Cole wanted to refuse the gift, knew what it cost her to give away something from her father. But he also knew that refusing would dishonor what she was trying to say. I'll keep it. And I'll remember. They stood in the gathering darkness, two people from different worlds who'd collided by accident and somehow found a way to turn violence into hope. Around them, the canyon settled into an uneasy peace as people began preparing for the journey south. Cole stayed through the night, helping where he could, keeping watch with the sentries, making sure the lieutenant kept his men in position. When dawn broke pink and gold over the canyon rim, Luna and her people rode out slowly, a caravan of families on horses and mules, carrying what they could of their lives in bundles and baskets. Cole rode alongside them until they were clear of the canyon, then pulled up to watch them go. Luna stopped her horse beside his, the two of them sitting in silence as her people streamed past toward the border, toward exile, toward whatever future waited in Mexico. You never told me your full name, she said. Cole Harrison. I run cattle outside Phoenix. Or I used to, anyway. Will you go back there? Eventually. But first I need to make sure you get across the border safe. That lieutenant might keep his word, but there's a lot of desert between here and Mexico. A lot of places where bounty hunters or cavalry patrols might not care about promises made in the dark. Luna smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it reached her eyes. Then ride with us, Cole Harrison. Be the bridge between your people and mine for a few more days. After that, we will call our debt settled and you can return to your quiet life. Deal? Cole said and turned his horse south, following Luna and her people toward a border drawn on maps but invisible on the land, toward a future uncertain but alive with possibility. Behind them, the lieutenant watched them go with an expression Cole couldn't read. Maybe relief, maybe regret, maybe just exhaustion. The young officer would write his report, would spin the story however he needed to for his superiors, would probably never fully understand what he'd really accomplished by choosing mercy over orders. But Cole understood. As he rode through the desert morning beside a people not his own, protecting a leader who'd given him purpose when he thought he didn't want it, he understood that this was what mattered. Not the grand gestures or the perfect solutions, but the choices made in moments when everything could go either way. The choice to give a wounded woman his only horse. The choice to walk toward trouble instead of away. The choice to find a third option when the only visible ones led to death. The sun climbed higher, the desert stretched endlessly ahead. And Cole Harrison, who'd wanted nothing more than to be left alone, discovered that sometimes the thing you need most is exactly what you've been running from. Part 5. The journey to the Mexican border took 3 days of hard riding through country that tested everyone. Luna's people knew the land, knew where to find water holes and safe camps, but the wounded and the children slowed them down. Cole rode point or rear guard depending on what the terrain required, constantly scanning for threats that could come from any direction. On the second day, they spotted dust on the horizon. Cole counted 6 riders, too few to be military, moving with the purposeful pace of men tracking prey. Bounty hunters, probably the same ones who'd been chasing Luna or others like them who'd heard about Apache families moving south. Luna saw them too. Dude, she pulled her horse alongside Cole's, her face grim. They will try to take us before we reach the border. Easier to claim bounty on this side of the line. Then we make sure they don't catch us before the border. Cole turned to the teenage boy who'd first spotted him at the canyon. You know this country. Where's the nearest crossing? The boy pointed southeast. Rio del Carmen, half a day's ride. But the approach is open ground. They will see us coming. Let them see us. As long as we're moving, we're harder to catch. Cole looked back at Luna. Can your people ride faster? The wounded cannot. The children cannot. If we run, we leave them behind. Then we don't run. We make them think twice about attacking. Cole checked his revolver, counted his remaining ammunition. Still 6 bullets, same as always. Not nearly enough if it came to a fight, but maybe enough to make them cautious. How many of your people can shoot? Luna counted in her head. 5 warriors who were strong. 3 women who know rifles. 2 young men who are learning. Me, if it comes to that. 11 guns against 6. Better odds than we had at the canyon. We spread out the fighters, make ourselves look like more trouble than we're worth. Most bounty hunters don't get paid enough to die for it. They reorganized the group, putting fighters on the flanks and rear, bunching the families in the center. It made them look more like a war party than refugees, which was exactly the point. Cole took the rear position alone, making sure he was visible to the pursuing riders. The bounty hunters kept their distance but didn't leave. They were patient, experienced, waiting for a mistake or an opportunity. Cole respected that even as he hated it. These weren't glory seekers or young fools. These were professionals who knew their business. As the sun reached its peak, Cole recognized the lead rider. It was the Texan from the stagecoach attack, the one who told him about Luna supposedly killing miners. The man saw Cole too, and something changed in his posture. He spurred his horse forward, closing the distance but staying out of rifle range. You made a choice, cowboy, the Texan shouted across the desert. Wrong choice, but I respect the conviction. You know we can't let you cross that border. Too much money at stake. Then you know I can't let you stop us, Cole called back. Question is whether you want to die trying to collect. 6 against 1? I like those odds. 6 against 11, Cole corrected. And we've got the high moral ground which doesn't stop bullets but makes folks fight harder. You really want to test that? The Texan was quiet for a moment, studying the spread of Apache fighters, calculating ranges and cover and all the factors that turned theory into bloody reality. How about a deal? You give us the woman. Just her. She's the one with the bounty. Rest of you can cross into Mexico. No trouble from us. Cole felt fury rise in his chest, hot and sharp. That's not a deal. That's a death sentence dressed up with manners. That woman killed 2 men in cold blood. The law says she pays for that. Law's not always the same as justice, Cole said. And you're not a lawman anyway. You're just a man chasing money, so let's be honest about what this is. You want to drag her back to Prescott, collect your bounty, and sleep fine knowing you sent someone to hang for defending her family. I want to make sure she and her people get somewhere they can live without someone hunting them every day. Only one of us is on the right side of this. Right side doesn't pay my bills, cowboy. Neither will being dead. Cole pulled his revolver, didn't aim it, but made sure it was visible. You've got 6 men. I've got 11 fighters spread across terrain that favors defense. You charge us. Maybe you win. Probably you win. But 2 or 3 of you don't ride away? Which 2 or 3 you want to be? You willing to die so your partners can collect? The Texan sat his horse in silence, the desert wind pulling at his hat. Cole could see him working through it, doing the math that every professional fighter learns. The money was good, but only if you live to spend it. This isn't over, the Texan finally said. We'll remember this. You and that Apache woman both. I expect you will, Cole agreed. But it'll be over for today, and today's what matters. The bounty hunters pulled back, turning their horses northwest, back toward Prescott and easier marks. Cole watched them go until they disappeared into the heat shimmer, then let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Luna rode back to join him, her face unreadable. You made enemies for me. They will not forget. Had enemies already? What's a few more? Cole holstered his revolver and tried to ignore the shaking in his hands, the rush of almost violence leaving him hollow. Let's keep moving. Still got miles before we're safe. They reached the Rio del Carmen as the sun touched the horizon, painting the water gold and red. It wasn't much of a river, barely 20 feet across and shallow enough to wade. But it was the line on maps that meant Mexican territory, meant the end of American jurisdiction, meant something that looked almost like freedom. Luna's people crossed in small groups, the stronger helping the weaker, children held high to keep them dry. Cole stayed on the American side until everyone was across, watching the northern horizon for any sign of pursuit. When the last person made it over, he urged Copper into the water, felt the cool current swirl around the horse's legs. Halfway across, he stopped. 1 foot in America, 1 in Mexico, the border running invisible through the river beneath him. He thought about the choices that had brought him here, about the woman who'd given him purpose and the people who'd trusted him to lead them to safety, about the life waiting back at his ranch and the life that might be possible if he chose different. Luna was waiting on the far bank, watching him with those fierce dark eyes that saw too much. You were thinking whether to come further or turn back. Something like that, Cole admitted. We are safe now. The debt is paid. You gave me your horse when I needed it most. I gave you purpose when you were lost. We are even. Are we? Cole looked at the turquoise stone she'd given him, still hanging around his neck. I'm not so sure. Luna smiled, and it transformed her face from fierce to something softer, something that carried hope instead of just determination. Then come with us a while longer. There is a village 20 miles south where my mother's sister lives. We will rest there, heal our wounded, decide what comes next. You can stay or go as you choose, but at least you will know you saw us safe all the way, not just to a line on a map. Cole thought about his ranch, his cattle, his quiet life that had started to feel like hiding instead of living. He thought about the lieutenant who'd chosen mercy over orders, about the bounty hunters who'd chosen money over death, about all the small decisions that added up to who a person really was. 20 miles, he said. Then I decide. He rode Copper the rest of the way across, felt the horse's hooves touch Mexican soil, felt something shift inside himself that he couldn't quite name. The caravan reformed and moved south, following trails that Luna's people had known for generations, toward a village that might offer rest, toward a future still unwritten. They reached the village on the 4th day, a collection of adobe buildings tucked into a valley where a stream ran year-round and cottonwoods provided shade. Luna's aunt came out to meet them, an older woman with silver in her hair and eyes that missed nothing. She embraced Luna carefully, mindful of the wounded leg, and spoke in rapid Apache that made Luna laugh for the first time since Cole had known her. The villagers welcomed the refugees with food and water, and places to sleep. Cole found himself in a small room with a bed that felt impossibly soft after days of sleeping on hard ground. He lay there listening to voices outside, to children playing, to life continuing despite everything. Luna found him the next morning, her legs still bandaged, but moving easier. She sat on the edge of the low wall outside his room, looking out at the mountains that marked the horizon. My aunt says we can stay here as long as needed, she said. Some of the families want to keep moving deeper into Mexico, to villages where they have relatives. Others want to stay here, start over. I do not know what I want yet. You'll figure it out, Cole said. You're good at that, making impossible choices and finding ways through. So are you. Luna turned to look at him directly. Will you go back to your ranch now? Back to your quiet life raising cattle? Cole had been asking himself the same question all night. I should. Got responsibilities there. Got a life I built. But somehow it feels smaller now, like I've seen too much to go back to pretending the world is just what happens inside my fence line. Then do not go back. Stay here. My people need someone who understands both worlds, someone who can trade with American merchants, who can warn us if cavalry comes looking, who can be the bridge you became when you helped us escape. She paused, then added quietly, I would value having you near. You have proven yourself trustworthy in ways I did not think possible from a white man. Cole felt the pull of it, the temptation to say yes, to build something new instead of returning to something old. But he also knew himself well enough to recognize the danger in running toward purpose instead of choosing it deliberately. I need to go back first, he said slowly, working it out as he spoke. Need to settle things at the ranch, make sure it's taken care of. But after that, maybe I could come back sometimes. Trade goods, bring news, be that bridge you're talking about. Not living here full-time, but not abandoning it either. A foot in both worlds instead of choosing one. Luna considered this, her face thoughtful. A man who belongs nowhere can sometimes belong everywhere, or he can belong nowhere forever, which is its own kind of dying. She stood, testing her weight on the wounded leg. Go settle your ranch. Come back in the spring when the desert blooms. If you return, I will know you are serious. If you do not, I will know you chose the easier path. Either way, I will understand. She left him there with his thoughts and his choices. Cole stayed 2 more days, helping repair buildings, teaching some of the younger boys better shooting form, learning a few words of Apache from children who found his accent hilarious. Then he saddled Copper and prepared to ride north. Luna walked with him to the edge of the village, both of them silent until the buildings were behind them. Cole stopped and dismounted, standing face to face with the woman who'd changed everything by simply refusing to die quietly. "Thank you," he said, "for the purpose. For trusting me when you had no reason to. For showing me that minding my own business isn't the same as living right." "Thank you for the horse," Luna replied, "for the choices you made when easier ones were available. For proving that not all white men are the same." She pulled something from her pocket, pressed it into his hand. He looked down and saw a small leather pouch. "Seeds," she explained, "from a plant that grows only in the high desert, only in places where Apache have walked. Plant them at your ranch. If they grow, you will have a piece of this place with you, a reminder of the bridge you helped build." Cole closed his hand around the pouch, felt the small seeds shift inside. "I'll plant them, and I'll come back in the spring." "I will be here," Luna said, healing, leading, waiting to see if you are a man of your word. Cole mounted Copper and turned north, toward the border, toward his ranch, toward a life that would never quite fit the same way again. He rode for an hour before he stopped, pulled out the leather pouch, and looked at the seeds inside. Tiny things, brown and hard, carrying the potential for something that might take root and grow if given the right conditions. He thought about Luna's fierce eyes and determined jaw, about the cavalry lieutenant who'd chosen mercy, about the bounty hunters who'd chosen survival, about all the small moments where the world balanced on the edge of violence or peace, about the choices he'd made and the person they'd revealed him to be. The ranch waited. The cattle waited. The quiet life waited. But so did the spring, when desert plants bloomed and a promise made might become something real. Cole tucked the seeds carefully into his saddlebag and rode north, carrying purpose like a weight and a gift, knowing that some debts were never truly settled but instead transformed into something ongoing, something that asked not for payment, but for commitment. The sun climbed higher, the desert stretched endlessly around him, and Cole Harrison, who'd given a wounded Apache woman his only horse and received in return something beyond imagination, discovered that the greatest gifts were the ones that changed not what you had, but who you were. He would plant the seeds, he would settle his ranch, and when spring came, he would ride south again, toward a village in Mexico, toward a woman who'd taught him that running toward trouble could be its own kind of courage. The border lay somewhere ahead, invisible and absolute. But Cole was already learning to live in between, to be the bridge, to choose purpose over comfort. It was the hardest gift he'd ever received, and the one he'd never give back. The desert whispered its secrets to the wind. Copper walked steady beneath him. And somewhere to the south, Luna stood watching the horizon, waiting to see if the cowboy who'd changed her fate would prove himself worthy of the faith she'd placed in him. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And that, Cole decided, was exactly how it should be.